Do you know how to buy your homeschool curriculum? If this is the first time that you've been homeschooling, that is probably the most daunting question that you have. What do I do? Where do I buy my homeschool curriculum? What curriculum do I buy? It's a question that stumps so many parents. They think that that's the first place to start. Well, it's that time of year for me too. I'm doing what I do every year. I'm going through all my old curriculum, I'm looking at new curriculum, and I'm getting ready to set up the next school year. So let me walk you through a couple of easy steps that I do to get ready for homeschool. First of all, I begin by thinking about what I really want. In the foundations course, we teach this and we call it the dream boarding, homeschool dream boarding, because this is where you have to start. What do you really want from your homeschool? What do you want your family environment to be like? You don't want a whole lot of squabbling and resistance and fighting. You don't want your child to be frustrated. You don't want to be frustrated. You don't want to be bored. You don't want to be fighting over screen time. So you can start there. Part of what does not go on your dream board are those things. All right, what does go on your dream board are a spirit of collaboration, eagerness to learn, peacefulness. And we're not going to mistake no chaos for no commotion. I think that's a problem that a lot of parents think. They think that they see a lot of commotion, which is normal in a household where there are children. Lots of commotion, lots of activity, lots of noise, and some messes. And they think that that is chaos. That's not chaos. Chaos is where we have no plan, no structure. Every day is different and we make it up as we go. That's chaos. Chaos is frustration. Chaos is anxiety. Chaos is screaming at each other. We want to have a plan, and it's okay if it's noisy and if it's messy and if it's full of commotion. That's where the learning happens. But we do have a structure and a plan in place. And that means that we can teach from rest. And teaching from rest, as Sarah McKinsey, one of my favorite homeschool authors, so eloquently puts it, the chaos or the teaching from rest does not mean that there's no work going on. There's a lot of work, but it means that there's no anxiety in the midst of that work. You know where you're going and you know what you want. So that's the first step. We start with this dream board. What do you want? What do you want in your environment? What do you want your lifestyle to be like? Do you want to be anchored to a desk? And do you want to have things that you check off and that you know that you've accomplished and you have some feedback in the form of tests or grades or reporting, and this will help you? Or do you want the freedom to go out and go on many field trips and explore and teach your children to learn from life? Those are two different paths that you can take, and you have to choose, what do you want your lifestyle to be like? If you still have a career mom and you want to be a homeschooler, you have to be a homeschooler also. Well, how do you want this day to be structured? How much independent time do you think your children can actually manage in their independent work and allow you to still have that time to do your work that you're doing? So this is the first step. Let's think about what's possible, what life can really be like. And then the next step that we move on to is to look at the child. What does the child need? Where are those conflict points? If you can identify those conflict points, if you have a homework battle, start there and try to get down to the bottom of what's the source of this homework battle. Is it the fact that the child is working below his grade level and he's bored with the material? Is it the fact that the child is working above his grade level and we need to do some remedial work? Maybe there is a learning disability that we need to address. We need to help the child heal that learning disability at the source so that he then is able to function. If he has a sensory processing disorder, for example, just one of the many possible examples, and you'd never even realize that there was a fan going on in the background. And that fan going on in the background is causing this horrible distraction for him as he's trying so hard to concentrate because this is an irritation and he can't take control of his mental faculties to concentrate on what he's supposed to be doing. And so this could be a point of conflict. The child doesn't say the fan is bothering me, he just doesn't want to work, and there's this tension that happens. It could be, the source could be many, many things that you want to get down to the bottom of it. What is perhaps the physical barrier that is standing in the way from your child succeeding? So let's remove that physical barrier. Let's try to help the child at the source. Another reason there might be a personality conflict or a homework battle or some kind of anxiety is that maybe the child is learning in the wrong way. You have placed him in front of a screen, and the child is more naturally oriented to wanting to get into it, feel it, touch it. He's kinesthetic. He wants to learn from breaking things. And it's actually a really good way to learn when you actually break things and you figure out what happened, what went wrong. And you can't so easily do that on an online program. And that could be a barrier. Maybe you're frustrated because you actually have to sit down next to the child all the time in order for him to do any work at all. And you're frustrated. You say, how am I supposed to teach this child to be independent and to follow through with his work and be responsible? Well, maybe he needs you to sit down next to him and read the assignments to him because maybe he has a visual processing issue and reading is a real struggle for him, or it's a comprehension issue, and all along he's masking that because he's embarrassed. He doesn't want to tell you that that's really, or maybe he doesn't even understand that that's what's getting in his way. So those are just the tip of the iceberg, some possible things that might be causing the conflict. So when you start back at the dream board, and we took one step beyond that. We said we wanted to eliminate the homework battles. We don't want our home to be full of strife and anxiety. So then we move to the child. Well, where is this conflict point? What is the problem point that we can fix? Your problem point may not be severe. It may be minimal. But I promise you, in every home, there's a conflict point. In my home, there's always a conflict point, and I start at the beginning of my year by looking at those conflict points and saying, how can I address those conflict points? Because the conflict is coming from a place of frustration, fear, confusion. Something is in the way. I have to address what's right there in the way in order to fix that. Maybe it's nutrition, maybe it's getting enough sleep. Maybe it's making sure we have consistency in our schedule. Whatever it is, we can start to eliminate the anxiety. In many houses, there's a lot of shouting. We can start to eliminate all of that by starting to deal with the conflict point at its heart. Why is this happening? And then the next point is that we move on to ourselves, the teacher. Mom, you are so much more than a homeschooling mother. You have to do laundry, to meal plan, to cook, to keep your house. You have friendships, you have your marriage, you have finances. Maybe you even have a career or volunteer work on the side. There are so many other things that you have. And you don't want to leave this empty hole in your heart because you are saying, I had to give up everything to be a homeschooling mother. No, let's not give up everything to be a homeschooling mother. Let's find a way to bring your child into your world. If you have a business, can your child learn at your lap? As you are managing your business, can you talk about the finances with your child? If you have an older child, and he can start to learn how to fill out insurance forms and legal forms and interface with clients as he watches you at least. And that's part of his education, and you're not giving up what you're doing, you're bringing him into it. Are you an entrepreneur like I am? Then you spread that entrepreneurial flame to your child. This year, my 7th grader, he has as his curriculum the opportunity for him to start his own business. He's caught that passion from his father and from me about being independent, launching businesses, and he wants to do that. That's wonderful. That's part of his education. He has learned that from watching his parents, and that's beautiful. So you don't have to give up. In fact, you shouldn't give up your life in order to homeschool. You should welcome your children into that as part of their education. Let's talk about your own learning interests. Don't nail yourself down to a method and a textbook that you hate. If you love to discuss a particular subject, then by all means do a unit study on that and bring the child into it. Ignite the flame within yourself for a love of learning. Your child will catch that love of learning. We're also going to then look at our resources. What really is available? You might think that we have to do things the way they've always been done. If you're coming from the public school system or even the private school system in which they follow the industrial model, you might believe that education looks like this. This is what education looks like, and we have it in a nice neat box that education is working in textbook and answering the questions and completing exams. Think outside the box. Again, go back to your dream board. What's possible? Is it better to learn historical facts by memorizing dates and names and answering a quiz? Or is it better to hear a captivating story about it? A story that you'll never forget because there's human drama and you learn how it affects your life right here and right now. That kind of study happens over the dinner table. That kind of study happens in the car. That kind of study happens as you watch a fascinating documentary together or read historical novels. There are so many ways to bring in more subjects than you could ever imagine in the day-to-day conversation. I remember there was one year where we wanted to study logic. And well, I had in my lesson planning loaded up all of the ideas in my dream board of all of the subjects that I would really love to teach my children. And there was Latin, and there was logic, and there was every meaning. In the end, I had 15 subjects that I wanted to teach. All right, I'm not going to nail my children down, not my 4th grader, and make them study 15 subjects a day. So I had to leave a lot on the cutting board floor, or find sneaky ways to get it into the week. And here's how I did it with logic. I, myself, studied one logical fallacy on the 1st of every month. I just Googled it. I just did a search, refreshed my memory on that logical fallacy, maybe watched a YouTube video on it, started to practice how it's used. And then at the dinner table, the next week, after I really understood the concept, I would bring it up. Hey, have you ever heard of this logical fallacy? Do you know what a logical fallacy is? Let me explain it to you. And then over the course of the next several weeks, we would have dinner time conversations talking about using examples of that logical fallacy. And then I would do the same thing the next month with a new fallacy. Think about how many months we have in a school year and how many fallacies we could really practice. No test, no textbook, no agenda. The children were just engaged in a great conversation. That is what is possible when you think about your family dynamic and how you can make all of life an opportunity for learning and for engaging and for building a relationship centered around the love for the vast knowledge in the universe. And now my relationship with my children is built on that. It's built on the great conversations that we have. My relationship with my children is not one of conflict. We were saying you have to do your work, you have to take a test, and if you do badly on a test, that means that you are less valuable than a smarter child. That's how a child feels. You remember. Oh, we all remember taking tests and feeling like you just don't measure up. Somehow you don't get it. Somehow you're not as good as other children. Or if you did very well, you felt ashamed of that too. And you had to hide it. You had to hide the fact that you're a nerd. We don't want our children to have those kinds of comparisons, competitions, that criticism, that internal voice that says that they're not worthy because they somehow didn't measure up. We want the parent-child relationship to be built on a mutual love for human formation. This is what education can be about. This is the beauty of learning in the home setting. So I'm about to go out today. We have a wonderful used book sale going on right now, 1.5 blocks from my house. I'm going to walk there. And we are going, it's over at Aquinas Learning. They've got their classical education, and all the parents have brought in their used curriculum and used books, and they've laid it all out, and I'm going to go rummage through the material and see what I can get for my kids. But before I'm going over there, first I've done this evaluation. I thought, what do I want? What do I really want? And what does my child really need? So already I've been able to rule out a lot of beautiful things that I'm not even going to pick up, I'm not even going to look at, because it's not what the child needs. Do I need to spend a lot of money on a logic book or a history book, or only if I've determined that that fits into the school year plan. And now I'm going to also look at the schedule of my family. What does my schedule look like, and how much actual book learning can we do versus how much out in the real life learning do we have to do? More or less? How many clubs are we going to be involved in? What can I really handle? So when parents come and they say, how do I choose my curriculum? I ask you to take a few steps back and first do a good, hard evaluation of your family, of your child, of yourself, and begin with the dream board. That's where it's all going to begin. Begin by asking, what do you really want this year? What is really